Welcome to True Crime Storytime. The channel explores true cases, revealing the mystery behind the crimes through each fascinating and dramatic story. It's starting to get chilly in the small town of Center Township, Minnesota, on October 26, 2022. The deserted streets, the houses surrounded by trees, all give the feeling of a peaceful place away from the hustle and bustle of the city. But the peace doesn't last long. A mysterious disappearance occurs, shocking the whole community. Bryce Brogel, a passionate 23-year-old man, has disappeared without a trace. He was last seen leaving his girlfriend Cordelia Lex's house, preparing to go to a nearby warehouse to store his belongings. But he never returned. What happened to Bryce that fateful night? In the days that followed, the pieces began to fall into place. A conflicting testimony, strange clues in a barn, and finally, a grisly discovery in the woods turned what seemed like a routine disappearance into a horrific murder. The intertwining clues not only revealed the truth about Bryce's death, but also shed light on a conflicted family relationship and unimaginably cold actions. Who was responsible for this crime? It was a question that plagued police and haunted Bryce's loved ones. The answer would lead to an unexpected truth. Bryce Brogel was a passionate young man, born and raised in the small town of Brainerd, Minnesota. Described by friends and family as an outdoorsman, Bryce had always dreamed of building a self-sufficient life in the wilds of Alaska. His passion is to explore new lands, living a simple but meaningful life. Bryce started dating Cordelia Lex, a young and energetic girl, in February 2022. The two quickly bonded over their shared love of animals and a thirst for adventure. In June of that year, Cordelia graduated from high school, and soon after, the two embarked on a 4-month journey through the western states of the United States, from Arizona to Washington. The trip was not only an opportunity for them to explore, but also a way for Cordelia to temporarily escape her stressful home environment. Cordelia, 18, once described her father as over-controlling. She grew up in a family with many conflicts, with a mother with Huntington's disease and a younger sibling who was transitioning. Although she loved her family, Cordelia also felt suffocated by her father's interference in her personal life. When Cordelia and Bryce returned from their long trip on October 26, 2022, they planned to settle down in Minnesota. But just hours after their arrival, Bryce disappeared. Cordelia was the first to call the police, saying that her father had accompanied Bryce to a warehouse to pack his belongings, and then that Bryce had been taken by unidentified men. From there, the case began to take an unexpected turn as investigators discovered dark secrets hidden within the LX family. On October 26, 2022, Bryce Brogel mysteriously disappeared. According to Cordelia, Bryce's girlfriend, he had accompanied her father, Michael Lex, to a nearby warehouse to pack his belongings after a long trip. Bryce left home around 5 p.m. and never returned. Cordelia said that her father, Michael, had returned home alone and told her that Bryce had been arrested at the warehouse by a group of men in 2 unmarked cars. Michael said that the men had not provided any information about their identities, the reason for the arrest, or the agency they represented. Cordelia was confused by this, but she still hoped that Bryce would contact her. Cordelia sent several text messages to Bryce that evening, expressing her concern and hoping for an answer. However, there was no response from Bryce. After 2 days, on October 28th, Cordelia decided to go to the Crow Wing County Sheriff's Department to report her boyfriend missing. The police began their investigation with Michael Lex, the last person to see Bryce. During questioning, Michael was cooperative, saying that they had gone to the warehouse to sort through Bryce's belongings. They were stopped by men driving an unmarked car with flashing lights resembling a police car. He claimed that the men had taken Bryce away and then released him. However, Michael was unable to provide any specific information about the identity or organization of the group, making his testimony difficult to believe. The police also noticed inconsistencies in Michael's testimony when he said that Bryce had control over Cordelia, but showed little concern for Bryce's condition when he was arrested. They began to suspect that he was involved in Bryce's disappearance. The police quickly collected Michael and Bryce's phone records. Notably, Bryce's phone was turned off shortly after he left the warehouse. Michael later admitted that he had thrown Bryce's phone in the trash at a gas station under the pretext of protecting Cordelia from being tracked. This action raised suspicions that Michael was deliberately trying to cover his tracks. GPS data from Michael's phone also revealed a suspicious itinerary. In the early morning hours of October 27th, he returned to the warehouse and then traveled to a remote area near Lake Edward. These actions prompted police to obtain a search warrant for the warehouse and the area near the lake. On October 29th, police executed a search warrant for the warehouse where Bryce was last seen. At the scene, they found bloodstains on the concrete floor, a bottle of bleach, and traces of dragging that appeared to have been caused by a heavy object. These evidence were sent for testing, and the results confirmed that the blood belonged to Bryce Brogel. Using location data from Michael's phone, police continued to search the wooded area near Lake Edward on October 30th. There, they found a poorly camouflaged burial pit covered with branches and dead leaves. When they dug down, police discovered the body of Bryce Brogel. He had been shot in the back of the head, confirming that this was a deliberate murder. As the investigation deepened, Michael Ilex's motive for killing Bryce Brogel gradually became clear. However, inconsistencies in Michael's testimony and the complex psychological factors of the case raised many questions about the real reason he killed Bryce. From the information gathered, Michael Ilex clearly disliked Bryce Brogel. He had repeatedly expressed negative attitudes toward his daughter's boyfriend. Michael claimed that Bryce had abused Cordelia, which resulted in her appearing with bruises on her face. However, Cordelia denied this and said the injuries were accidental. Michael described Bryce as controlling, forcing Cordelia to go through him in all decisions, including the use of the phone and email. Michael believed that Bryce was a threat to his daughter, and this motivation became a major factor in the violent actions. Michael repeatedly emphasized that he acted to protect Cordelia from Bryce. However, evidence suggests that Michael's motives were more complex. Michael was accused of being overprotective of his daughter, to the point that Cordelia felt restrained. He also used to spy on Cordelia's previous boyfriends by hiring a private investigator. Michael admitted to threatening Bryce, saying that if he saw any more injuries on Cordelia, he would not just talk. This shows his personal anger towards Bryce. These factors suggest that Michael may have acted not only because of his daughter, but also because of his personal control and sense of power. Michael claimed that he did not plan to kill Bryce, but that the incident occurred during an argument. However, conflicting details have refuted this testimony. Michael once told relatives that he had dug a hole for Bryce, suggesting that the murder was planned in advance. He collected guns from his sister's house and brought them with him when he took Bryce to the warehouse. This is inconsistent with his testimony that he accidentally brought the guns with him. Michael had complex psychological traits that influenced his actions. He viewed his daughter as the center of his life, refusing to accept any relationship that he considered unworthy. This was evident in the Daddy's Little Girl's tattoo on his body and his interference in Cordelia's personal life. Michael had a history of sexual assault and misconduct, indicating a tendency toward violence and disregard for the law. Michael testified that Bryce threatened to never let Cordelia go. This may have exacerbated his fears and motivated him to act in an extreme manner. Several factors may have contributed to Michael's murder of Bryce. Michael's strained relationship with Cordelia may have put a great deal of pressure on him. Michael may have felt helpless in his inability to convince Cordelia to leave Bryce, leading him to act in an extreme manner. Michael's previous convictions suggest that he has a tendency to use violence to solve problems. During the trial, Michael attempted to argue that he had reacted in the heat of the moment to protect his daughter. However, the preparation of the gun, the pre-digging of the hole, and other evidence showed that the crime was a premeditated act. Michael Lex's motive was not simply to protect his daughter, but also stemmed from his control and hostility toward Bryce. His complex psychology, criminal record, and inability to control the situation drove Michael to this brutal act. On October 29, 2022, after important evidence was discovered, the police decided to arrest Michael Lex. The arrest warrant was issued shortly after the police exhumed Bryce Brogel's body in a wooded area near Lake Edward. Michael was arrested at his home in Center Township. When the police arrived, he appeared calm and did not resist. He was not surprised by his arrest, which further raised suspicions that he knew his actions would be discovered. During his arrest, Michael simply said, "I did everything for my daughter. I have no regrets." After his arrest, Michael was taken to the police station for questioning. There, he continued to assert that his actions were to protect Cordelia. Michael claimed that Bryce had threatened to kill Cordelia if she tried to leave him. He claimed that his murder was a moment of self-defense to ensure the safety of his daughter. Although he asserted that the murder occurred in a fit of rage, Michael could not explain why he brought the gun to the storage room or why he used the sled to bury Bryce's body. These details suggest that he had planned it in advance. On March 30th, 2023, the Crow Wing County District Attorney's Office upgraded the charges from second-degree murder without premeditation to first-degree murder with premeditation. This was done after new evidence was introduced, including witnesses, including Michael's two half-siblings, testified that he had repeatedly stated that he would kill Bryce. This testimony reinforced the argument that the murder was planned. Bloodstains at the storage shed, the blood-stained sled, and the burial site all indicated meticulous planning on Michael's part. Michael's prior convictions for 2 counts of sexual assault made it difficult for him to argue that he acted on impulse. Michael's daughter Cordelia was called to testify. During the investigation, she denied that Bryce had ever abused her and insisted that her relationship with Bryce was a happy one. Cordelia made it clear that she did not ask her father to interfere in her relationship. She stressed that Bryce never hurt her and that Michael's claims were untrue. Cordelia expressed her grief at losing Bryce and having her father charged with murder. She said, "Bryce did nothing wrong. My father went too far." At trial, the prosecution presented evidence that Michael had carefully planned to kill Bryce. Michael's 2 half-siblings claimed that he had confessed to killing Bryce to them. Location history from Michael's phone showed that he returned to the storage unit early on the morning of October 27th and traveled to the Lake Edward area where Bryce's body was found. Police discovered skid marks, cleaning bottles with Bryce and Michael's DNA, and traces of blood at the storage unit. Throughout the prosecution, Michael continued to argue that his actions were to protect Cordelia. He told the court, "I have no regrets about what I did. If I had not acted, my daughter would have died." However, the overwhelming evidence and testimony from Cordelia herself refuted his argument, leaving him unable to justify his actions. The prosecution of Michael Lex showed that this was not a spontaneous murder, but a deliberate and premeditated murder. His actions were condemned as cold and unjustifiable. Michael Lex's trial took place in March 2024 in the Crow Wing County Courthouse, Minnesota. The case quickly attracted attention because of its complex and heartbreaking nature. Michael faced 2 main charges: first-degree murder, premeditated; second-degree murder, unpremeditated. The prosecution, led by the district attorney, presented a series of evidence and testimony to prove that Michael had planned to kill Bryce in advance. Michael's phone showed that he had been to the storage facility early on the morning of October 27th and to the Lake Edward area where Bryce's body was buried. These actions occurred before the police began their investigation, suggesting that Michael had attempted to conceal evidence Forensic experts confirmed that traces of blood found at the scene belonged to Bryce. Additionally, sled marks on the storage floor were consistent with moving the victim's body. Michael's two half-siblings testified that he confessed to killing Bryce immediately after the crime. They also revealed that Michael had talked about digging a hole to dispose of Bryce. The gun Michael used was found in his home. Forensic tests confirmed that this was the gun that caused Bryce's fatal wound. Michael pleaded guilty to killing Bryce but denied that the act was premeditated. He claimed that he was driven by anger and concern for his daughter Cordelia's safety. He said that Bryce had threatened to kill Cordelia if she tried to leave him. Michael claimed that in a fit of rage, he shot Bryce to protect his daughter. However, details such as bringing the gun beforehand, cleaning the scene with detergent, and trying to hide the body suggest that his actions were not impulsive but calculated. Michael's daughter Cordelia was called as a key witness. She strongly denied all allegations that Bryce had abused her. She told the court, "Bryce did nothing to hurt me. He was a loving and caring person." She expressed her grief over the loss of her lover and the conviction of her father. Cordelia's testimony completely contradicts Michael's defense, undermining the argument that he acted to protect his daughter. They stress that Michael had meticulously planned and executed the murder in cold blood. This was not a spontaneous act, the prosecutor concluded. This was a carefully planned act by a father who wanted to control his daughter's life. Michael's attorneys focused on how he was a worried father who acted in a stressful situation because he thought his daughter was in danger. After 6 hours of deliberations, the jury returned the verdicts. First-degree murder, guilty. Second-degree murder, guilty. Michael Lex was sentenced to life in prison without parole for first-degree murder. The court stressed that his actions were deliberate, calculated, and indefensible. He remained silent as the verdict was read. When allowed to speak, he said only, "I did this for my daughter. I have no regrets." She expressed the double pain of losing both her lover and her father. After the trial, she said, "Bryce did not deserve to die, and my family did not deserve this pain." The case ended with a harsh sentence for Michael Lex, affirming that the law does not tolerate murder for any reason. However, the event left deep wounds for all involved, especially Cordelia, who had to deal with loss and conflict in her family. Thank you for watching. Like, share, and subscribe for more true crime stories. Don't forget to hit the notification bell to stay updated. Your support means the world to us.